I'll speak on behalf of CK that we are so proud of you.
Thank
and
you.
what you've done, and that podcast of you being able to handle Gerard Butler.
Yeah.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Meditation
When they were being weird, I was like, oh God.
Yeah.
Here at the Joe Vore Podcast, we are honored to be presented by Step One Underwear. Let me just say this. You do not become the world's most prolific Uber driver and podcast host without being cool and comfortable. So what are you waiting for? Click the link in the description below, grab yourself a pair, and discover a whole new life of comfort and style. Enjoy the show.
Hey, Joe.
Hey, oh my goodness. Craig, how's it going?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I like your background. Is this new? I haven't seen you break this out before.
Yeah, this is new actually. Now I've sent it out to all the staff, so now they're going to have it in their backgrounds too as well. I don't even know what the cityscape is back there.
I was going to guess Miami, but I don't even, I don't know. It's not.
I don't know it either.
It looks good. Maybe it's just made up. Maybe it's just like, let's just make it look
it's one of those like digitalized. I think it's almost like sci-fi. It looks like.
Yeah, it is.
Kind of
looks like some sort of intro to a Michael Bay movie or something.
Oh God, don't bring that Michael Bay.
Oh my gosh. I love it. So this is great. We're finally doing it.
We're finally doing this after how many years now that we've worked together?
Right, but you haven't been doing public interviews the whole time.
No, I haven't been doing them. I just dive into my work, so I don't want to. This.
Yeah, I know.
So I'm more about the work than doing these kinds of things. But I've got a marketing department now, and they're wanting me to get out more and do things more and talk about the agency more. And I have, you've worked with the staff in the agency here, and a lot of them are saying, hey, you got to go and stand out there and talk more about our agency and the great work we're doing here. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'll do that, but I don't know if I'm a really good spokesperson. I'm not a great Pillsbury Doughboy or Keebler Elf, but I'll try my best. So I try my best. I'm not. I was like you.
Yeah, I was thinking of like what to compare this. Like, I was just like, well, when you were saying whoever you were talking to, that it was like, well, have you been on Joe's podcast yet? And you're like, no, I haven't. And you were like, well, I'm just letting you know what they're saying. I'm not trying to invite myself. And I was like thinking, I'm like, well, I was a little bit nervous because, usually we're just talking shop and we're talking business or whatever. And I'm trying to think of what to compare it to. It'd be like if I went out on a Friday night and saw one of my high school teachers drinking a margarita at Chili's. It's like, I'm used to just being in school. And now I see you on the outside. It's weird. I don't know how to react.
Yeah, it is interesting because you and I are always talking shop, and we do talk a little bit of personal stuff.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, a little bit of stuff, but it's it's interesting because I guess it is like that, seeing your high school teacher out with his family or something, and
right,
me getting out and doing things. Yeah.
So it's you're out in the wild here, but I like it. This is good. I'm gonna learn more about you. People are gonna be able to watch this and learn more about the industry, about just what's going on at the agency. So I think this is great for everyone.
Well, and I'm honored to be on your show. It's with what you've done, and how the podcast has come along. I mean, hell, who would have thought when you first signed with me you'd be doing Gerard Butler and Maggie Q and
right,
all those people, the A-listers in Hollywood and stuff, and Alexis Louder and all that. And it's just I'm amazed. I'm like, oh, that's little Joe. Yeah,
it's crazy. Forget about who we've had on the show. It just looks and sounds way better.
Yeah, our team and you worked on your set.
We did.
And I know we wanted to make it you.
Right.
And your graphics for your Joe Vore podcast, most people don't know, but that took a lot of time to put together those graphics that you use for the podcast, but they incorporate you and your friends and things in your life, in there.
Oh yeah. The people, when I sent those out, and the people that I didn't have to explain the inside jokes to, I mean, they were like, that's awesome. They were like, they loved it. They got all the little things. And so that was really cool to do. And it's been fun to play around with the set. You know, I had my magazine with my Cavs back there. I got a couple bobbleheads. Obviously, we got the Step One, the license plate. It's just been cool to throw little personal things in there. It makes it fun. It kind of really makes it feel kind of a homey feel, like we're just kind of coming to hang out, which is what our goal was. So it's coming along. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, Step One is really thrilled with what you're doing. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, all those people over there down in Australia and everything, they're ecstatic, you know, about what you're doing and representing their brand and being part of the Joe Vore culture now.
Yeah, it's great, and I love them. I love the stuff, and yeah, it's been great. I'm wearing it out on all my hikes. I'm wearing it to the golf course. I mean, it's great. I love the shirt. You know, now we got, you know, more to just throw up back there. So it's fantastic. They've been great, and I got to make it down now. That's good. I got an extra excuse to go to Australia now. I don't know when or how I'm going to get there, but at least
You're invited to their corporate headquarters. From what they told me, they have a photographic studio there that they'll professionally shoot you and everything if you end up over there, is what they're telling me. So
I love it.
I think it's a great opportunity. You know, I'm happy for you. I'm happy.
Thank you.
With the progress on, you know, from when you started with us to where you are now, and things that you're doing and achieving, and which I get amazed by our talent in general.
Yeah. Well, the little things add up over time. And I always talk about, you know, the people, you know, it's kind of like working out. You see yourself in the mirror every day, and you don't, you know, because they're little changes, you know, and it goes so slow, and it's such a marathon, you don't really notice it. But then you put 6 months of work in, and someone who hasn't seen you in those 6 months, they're like, whoa, you're in great shape. Kind of same thing with this. You do little things day by day, and I'm like, oh gosh, I feel like I'm going nowhere. But then all of a sudden you kind of look back and you're like, wow, I did this interview. I added this to the podcast set. I got this deal. We have a sponsor. And all of a sudden you're like, wow, I kind of have done a lot. It just doesn't see it because you're in it day to day.
True. When you're in the mix, you don't see that it's that, you know, it's had added up over that time. You're just seeing what's currently in front of you and on your plate.
For sure.
And it's just, I think it's, you know, when I could step back and see, you know, I've said this to you before, you know, as a manager, you know, it's an art. And so stepping back and seeing the painting that is Joe Vore from when Joe Vore first signed, it just makes me happy and makes me smile. And, you know, you're always a ray of sunshine every time I talk to you. Always, you know, most of your viewers need to know that you are the same person off as you are on your show. You know, you still have that same ray of sunshine, that same personality when I talk to you.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Joe Vore Podcast, Way She Goes Podcast Network. We are here with a very special guest, super agent extraordinaire, my agent and manager, CK Talent, Craig Rogalski. Welcome to the show, sir. This is good.
This is an honor to be here, Joe. It's totally.
I love it. I love it. Craig, I want to start with this because as I've gotten to know you, and I think back to when I kind of had our little interview where we kind of got to know each other a little bit before I went through the full application process, and kind of what I've learned and what I've seen now being on the inside is you kind of have gone against the grain. Everyone thinks, you know, entourage or things that they see and hear, you know, these big agents, big fancy agencies like CAA, William Morris. I've been lucky enough to be, I've been to CAA before. I know how extravagant and beautiful it is in there. You know, they're in Hollywood. And you've kind of gone against the grain. You're not in Hollywood. You don't have one of these big brick and mortar shops. You know, you work remotely. You don't BS and lie to your clients. You really kind of give it to them straight. You have optimism, but you are very real with your clients. How do you feel that, like, how have you been able to create sort of your place in the market and be a real name and a big name in this industry, kind of going against the grain and not being inside the town of Hollywood?
It's It's a very good question. Nobody's ever asked me that before. That's why it's an honor to
Love it.
represent you.
Yes. I wanted to be original. I tried to be
It's going to
original.
be a double-edged sword here, because it's like, know me, not like
Right.
you know me as an interviewer. So
Right.
like these questions are going to be a little bit more tougher for me to answer than
Yeah.
I would normally have in these kinds of
A
situations.
little bit deeper. That's what we're going for.
Deeper.
Yeah.
I guess what I tell talent like yourself and staff is, I started CK because I wanted to march to the beat of our own drum. But I also wanted CK to be a new generation of an agency that was different than, the agencies of the 20s and the 40s and the 50s. A lot of these agencies have been around since that time, some of the large agencies. And I decided that, we're going to be a 2.0. We're going to adapt to the trends in the industry. We're not going to be just so rigid all the time. And we're going to let our talent be talent. I think a lot of agencies out there don't let their talent be talent. I don't put a noose around you and, walk you down the street. It's not the way that you and I operate.
Right.
I let you be Joe. And I think a lot of people who are in this industry as managers, they don't let their talent be talent. So I'm going to let my talent, be talent. I start off doing that, and anything that comes from that, anything that falls over the side and comes from that is just I think icing on the cake or an additional cherry on the top. But I've always said this agency was going to march to the beat of its own drum. I have that saying that everyone's heard. You've heard it millions of times. I'll burn down my effing agency before I let a talent be taken advantage of. And I mean by that. And there is talent at this agency that can vouch for that. You've been in those situations too, where you were being
100%.
taken advantage of by somebody and by an entity. And it was early on in your career with
Very
me.
early.
I literally burned down the agency to protect you.
Yep.
And I, worked with you to move your career forward independently of that. So I think that's what makes CK unique. I know there's articles out there that have called us like the Apple of talent agencies and, put the glamour side in it. But I think just at the core, that's what makes us different as a different than an agency and able to operate outside of Hollywood, virtual. I mean, I represent my clients. I've represented you for many years, and most of your viewers will be surprised to know you and I have a good representation relationship, but I've never met you in person.
Right. Is that the majority of your talent? Would you say you've only ever met over Zoom?
Yes, a good majority, though. I don't hide from them. If they come to
Right.
my geographic area, I'll go to lunch with them. I'll go to dinner with them.
I didn't know that. See, I would have.
Yeah.
I was afraid when I was in Miami. I was afraid to even ask you if that. I didn't know that was an option.
One of our football players was saying that, and I'm like, no, didn't want to bother you on spring break. I didn't want to imply like you had to come and see me. So I don't want to do that. So
Gotcha.
But he was like, oh, if I would have known that, I would have come up to see you. I just try to be very casual. I don't want to enter into my talent's lives. I don't invite my talent to my house.
Yep.
None of my talent, since CK's been around, have been invited. No staff has been invited to my house. I don't do big lavish parties. I'm not one of those managers.
Right.
I'm the guy that when I went to Miami Swim Lake, I sit in the corner on the floor, and on my phone and my text while everyone else is running around. I mean, it's just the way I am. I think you could get things effectively done. And garner the respect by being truthful, honest, and being fair, in the eyes of the storm. But that's the way I view things, and I teach that to the staff in this agency. And it's interesting to see the culture of the agency really emerge, in this agency from staff that have started off as interns and working themselves up to vice presidents of this agency.
Wow.
And having a hand on that. And even staff that are alumni of our agency are now placed in major sectors of the entertainment industry. And, I have a staffer that's leaving us and he's going to Universal Music.
Wow.
And another staffer that left us and he got a big wig job at Lionsgate. I mean,
Wow.
And we still stay in touch with them. They still text me. We're still friends. We're still on good terms. We have an open door policy. They could always come back. That's the way I look at it, as like, while you're here, I'm here to help. we're helping.
Okay, so we know now where we're at. That gives people a really good idea, kind of a inside baseball of kind of you and CK Talent. But let's go backwards here. Let's build up to this journey to where you started and where we are now. So you have a background in law, is that correct? Do I remember that correctly?
Yeah, I attended Penn State Law School. I'm not a lawyer, but I attended Penn State Law School.
All right, we are Penn State. I love it. I grew up, my dad's from Pennsylvania. I grew up a very big Penn State football fan before I came to Arizona State. So I didn't know that you were at Penn State.
Yeah. I went to a school called Dickinson School of Law, and they were bought by Penn State.
Gotcha. Okay, so we have a background in law here. Kind of take me through, I mean, did you always want to be a talent representative? Did you work through other agencies? Who were some of those, mentors and people that kind of shaped you along the way, people that you admired, maybe people you still keep in contact with? Who were those kind of people and those experiences along the way that led you up to starting CK Talent? And, because not everyone's wired the way where it's like some people want to be underneath someone, kind of be in a more established thing versus kind of an entrepreneurial, more so mindset and want to start up their own thing. So kind of, how were you kind of built and shaped to where you are now?
I mean, I have to credit to some of my fantastic mentors that I've had. I've had some really great mentors over my career, prior to starting CK and prior to segueing into this industry. I worked with Dr. Barazanji, who was the advisor to the ambassador of Saudi Arabia at the United Nations, and that was a fluke of me applying for an internship. And then he came to my college graduation. He came and spoke at my law school. I remember my mom going across the street to a security detail and giving them cake pieces of my graduation cake. And I'm like, Mom, they're in an unmarked car across the street. You can't go and do that, Justin. Kind of thing. And I have pictures of him in my house, and meeting King Fahd, who was the king of Saudi Arabia, and now his son, who's got that acronym name. I always mess up the name, but the acronym. But meeting them and meeting Queen Noor and having the experience of at the UN. But while you're at the UN, you're negotiating and mediating, and that's basically what you do. And so I guess that's where the founding principles are. And then I went to work for one of the chief justices in my home city, and he shaped my career. And we were the odd couple because he would drive his Harley Davidson to the courthouse, and the courthouse would rattle, and I would be the Poindexter guy, the nerd that would go in there and argue with him. And this clerk, who was all 60 years old at the time, Mary Ann, she would turn and say, "How could you argue and get out of there without getting him killing you? Because he's a biker, like in a biker gang with a ponytail." And I just had some really fantastic mentors growing up, starting out my professional, career or education. My professor at law school, Dean Navin, he was the chief counsel for Boeing,
Wow.
So learning contract law underneath him, which is a lot of what this business is about, and learning his techniques and learning from those people, I think, was important. I had some really great mentors. Professor O'Connor, who was a U.S. attorney, said that he was in my MBA program, and he said I was among one of the top 10 students that he's taught, and he taught me mediation. That was his mediation negotiation, and for MBA courses. So I mean, I had some really good and great professors and teachers, and then working my way up, and most of it was always done in like politics and stuff. It was mostly always done in the government and the law side, and becoming a member of the a coalition for the International Criminal Court, and getting to work on lobbying for the first female prosecutor in the court's history, Miss Basuda, and working with her. And I have a letter from her saying that, how I was instrumental in helping, and supporting her into getting into being the first female prosecutor at the IC, which is interesting because Ukraine's in the news and war crimes are being mentioned. I'm not going to get into politics here, but it's interesting because she's the one who's going to be prosecuting any of those kinds of war crimes. Wow. Because she's the chief prosecutor for the court right now. So I find that kind of, interesting. And I'm always, bearing to the TV on that. But I had some really great people, some really great contacts, people that I reach out to that still stay my mentors after that. So early on, and then segueing into talent management, there was a couple of athletes that I had known, and they said, "Hey, I'm having this issue and this trouble. Can you help me out?" And I helped them out. No, they said I was good at it, and I said, "Well, maybe this is something I want to do." And
Interesting.
then the starting of CK.
So you kind of felt, so it sounds like, I mean, that's very serious stuff. Not that what we do isn't serious, but it's definitely different. So you kind of almost fell into it. You had some people that you knew that were going probably through whatever legal negotiation or whatever their situation was. They just kind of consulted with you. They knew you were a smart guy. They trusted you, and they're like, "Hey, you're good at this." And you're like, "Yeah, I am good at this. I can do this." And then that's how it kind of happened. That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't know the definition of a talent manager when I
Yeah.
first started out, but apparently I was doing those things for these two friends of mine who said, "Hey, can you step in the breach? Because I'm too close to this situation. Can you just help me? I know you're a mediator, negotiator
Yeah.
person." And I said, "Sure, I'll step in and help you out." I mean, he's a friend, they're a friend. And so, I stepped in, and, Sky Baker was going to be on the US bobsled team, and go to the Olympics at Penang and all that. So I kind of stepped in, and I was helping him out, put together his training program, with a university coach, and, we worked together, and then it just started promulgating from there, where I said, "Okay, well, wait a second, if I'm doing this, then maybe I should be compensated for it, whatever." And then Sky and I ended up signing a contract, and that was it. It was even just signed directly with me, the contract. It wasn't even, because CK wasn't even around then
Right.
at that time. So, I just started doing those things like freelancing for people, and people said, "You got a good mind about this."
Here's another thing, and this is kind of more my curiosity too. Now, I don't know any better because I don't know anything else, but is CK unique in the way where at CK we have our agent and our manager all under one entity? Is that common around the industry? Because I feel like when I hear these celebrity interviews or whatever, all the big guns are at the WME, CAA, or whatever, these super A-list, but it seems like they have managers from when they were nothing before they were even at these agencies, whether they've started their own shop or they just kind of started with one client and have built up because they've risen along with their A-list friend or whatever. Is that unique in the industry to have an agency and management all kind of under one roof?
Yeah, I'll explain that. So it's very clear, is that we're an international agency, so some countries recognize manager, some countries don't recognize the term manager. They just recognize the word agent, but it's the same in those countries. They just don't. If I turned to them and said,
it's like Chancellor and Dean. It's like that joke in Neighbors where Rose Byrne doesn't realize that Dean means Chancellor, and she calls her the C word, and she goes, "I didn't know Dean meant Chancellor. I thought her name was Dean." And it's like a whole it's like that.
Yeah, it's like that. It means different terminology in different countries. Because if I was to go to Germany and say I'm a talent manager, they would like, "Huh?"
Yeah.
Like, it's not even in their vocabulary.
Gotcha.
So agent is in their vocabulary, but CK operates as a management company, so we are a manager. And
okay, there we go.
So that's what we do. So we're manager. So the way you would refer to me as manager.
Gotcha. Okay, fair. Now here's some things about the industry and talent I kind of have for you. This kind of takes me back. These seem like I was writing these up, and it feels like I was doing my interview with you all over again, the type of stuff I would ask. What would you say is your favorite and most satisfying part of your job?
This is going to sound so cliche, but
cliches are around because they're true. It's okay. Be cliche.
I always embarrass this because it just sounds so, and you know how un-Hollywood I am.
Yeah.
But it's just, I want my talent to be happy. Them being happy and fulfilling their dreams within being real and being reality wise, and fulfilling their dreams. And I'm not coming in saying I want to be Green Lantern tomorrow. I just signed with you, but them working over years of time to achieve their goals, like like Tion, achieving their goals over many years and finally achieving them, and having that recognition makes me happy. I look at myself as like their parent, my talent's parent. I want everything for my talent. I want them to have everything possible out there, but I also have to protect them from the wolves in sheep's clothing. I have to protect them from that. So I look at protecting my clients in that same vein, so I want them to be happy, but also they need to be realistic about this industry, and they need to be real about, not, everyone out there's a car salesman in this industry trying to sell you something and take advantage. I mean, you were in a situation that was similar to that. Come stay at a multi-million-dollar mansion, but we're going to own all your IP. It's like, and I remember I said to you, I said, it's not about the money. Right. At that point, I don't care that they're paying you X amount of dollars per month. Right. I'm not letting you sign this. I could have been that kind of manager that's in Hollywood, said, sign it and I'll take my commission and I'll go on my merry way. And then 6 months later, you would have been sent out to the brimstone and fires. Right. I was going to do that. So that's kind of like, I want my talent to be happy, but I also have told people this. I'm building a legacy here because I know that CK is bigger than just me. I think most managers and agents that get in these positions, that are similarly ranked to us, they get in these positions, these owners, CEOs and stuff like that, and they have this ego about them. And I set up CK that if I was to fall off the turnip truck and not be here, which has happened, I've gone in for an operation and not been around for a while, that this agency could run its own on its own. So just by one staff member leaving or one talent leaving doesn't destroy the agency. I don't put all the eggs in one basket. So, I can turn to a difficult client and say, yeah, take your X amount of thousands of dollars of commission. I don't want it, but I'm not releasing you. Yeah. What we've built here is different. And Justin and Sam say it's a culture here. It's a culture of what we built here, and I've had other people turn to me and tell me that my talent are almost culturally loyal to the agency. I think it's just, we're real with them. Yeah. And I think in a world of schemers and whatever that aren't real with their talent, I think it's just, I think it's just, it's tough. It's tough to see through the BS in Hollywood.
And I think the biggest thing that you guys do as well is you will take the time, okay, here's what we're going to do, but you also take the time to explain, you have an explanation for the why, what you're doing. Let me explain to you. Let me tell you how this works. And you will take the time to do that. And I think, at least for me, that helps, because there's been times, early on, and we're dealing with COVID. I'm like, oh God, I just want to jump at this job just because I was so desperate. But you're like, we can't do this. And it wasn't just, we can't do this. Here's the why. And even though I was still frustrated in the moment, not because of that, but mainly because it was COVID. And I'm like, God, what am I going to do? I just graduated from school. That's kind of where my mind was at. But now I can look back, especially, and be like, okay, this was explained to me in the moment. And now enough time has passed where you can see it through, but it's always going to be tough in the moment. But I think it is really important that you guys will take the time to explain why we're making the decisions and the moves and the directions that we're going.
Yeah. Not to tell your tea, but I guess it's, you are a good case study of what you're explaining here, because, early on when you first signed with me and someone was throwing a boatload of money at you at 20 something years old. And at the same time, I was reading the contract and saying, well, they're going to, or whatever, that they're going to own all your IP and that they're going to do X, Y, and Z to you. And this is what's going to happen. A 22-year-old self or 20-year-old self, Joe, couldn't understand that originally. And then I kept spending time and days explaining that to you. And eventually, it started to hit home for you, and you started to realize, oh yeah, I'm getting, as a 22-year-old young talent starting out, I'm getting taken advantage of here. Yep. And I turned to you and I said, and I remember this conversation with you very clearly. I turned to you and said, Joe, I'm going to make you your own person. Yes. You're going to be your own talent.
And I just never, and that was never in my head. Your own IP. And now here I've never been very entrepreneurial. And now all of a sudden, you know, fast forward a few years, the more that I realize and the better I get as at the production side, as I meet more people that can kind of help me and elevate my stuff. And I've just seen what I can do with this podcast, working with people at the agency. I'm like, my mindset really has flipped. I'm like, yeah, why can't I just do this for myself and own it and have it for me? Because that's what I'm trying to create. Why would I do it underneath another umbrella? Not that you can do it all on your own, but you know, that mindset really has flipped for me. And I think you guys, in explaining everything, not just going in that direction, but actually explaining it to me, has really kind of flipped me. And I obviously think it's for the better, of course.
And now you own your own stuff.
Yeah.
You own your own IP. You own, you know, we helped you design a set. You know, you have your own logos, which we helped you, you know, design through our graphic artist department. You know, you have your own stuff and you're on your own 2 feet, and you don't owe that to anybody.
Right.
You know, and I wouldn't even say I would take ownership of that. You've done this, and I'm just happy to be the conductor in your orchestra.
For sure.
You know, and I like seeing how you've come about, but most people don't realize there is a lot of hard work it goes into being a talent.
For sure.
You know,
so what would you, speaking of talent, what would you say in your talent, what's the common trait that you see in the people that are the most successful, that, you know, quote unquote, make it, that actually eventually go from starting out to actually doing whatever they want to do in this industry for a living?
Yeah. One of the qualities that I would look for in a talent is, you know, or I tell talent, is to be patient, and you'll persevere. And I see many managers not adapting to that same philosophy too. So it works both sides of the coin. Yeah. You know, I see a lot of managers coming in red hot, and then they fizzle out because the fuel, you know, goes out on them, you know. And I see the same thing with actors or talent in general. They come in right hot, and then they, you know, and some talent think they know it all, and that's great. And they'll go out there and they'll learn their lessons, and they'll take their bruises. You know, I see a lot of talent, you know, do that. But I tell talent this, and I think I've told you this: if you're patient, you'll persevere.
Yeah.
If you're not patient in this industry, you will not persevere.
Right.
Everyone, because and I tell talent, you know, you come into this and this is your career. You want this to be your career. Well, you get out of medical school and become a doctor. That's the start of your career.
Right.
And you don't go to being Einstein overnight.
Right. And you also don't go from undergrad to being a doctor. There's all those residencies and unpaid this and late hours, like a bunch of work, even before you're even, I mean, all that work has to go in. It just doesn't happen. Yeah.
I mean, my staff yell at me all the time because I'm doing the Ronald Reagan thing now. Because they yell at me because I work like 16-hour days. I work like 6:30 in the morning, you know, East Coast time, until about 6-7 o'clock at night. So now I'm doing the Ronald Reagan thing where they're making me take a nap in my afternoon. So Justin and Sam are literally scheduling nap time for Craig in the afternoon because they know I get burned out, and they're juggling my schedules now to the point where I can't have such big things all on the same day because, you know, they want me at my peak. So it's you know, it's interesting that, you know, when people try to schedule appointments with me, I say my staff run my schedule.
Yeah.
I don't touch I don't even have access to my calendar. I'm not allowed to put things in my calendar without executive assistance.
Probably good for you.
Permission. Yeah, it's probably a good thing. But, you know, a spark and a talent, you know, I saw that in you. I've seen that in Tion. You know, I've seen that in many talent, you know, that come in. But I think also listening, if you work with a manager or an agent, to listen to them, because they can see things that you might not see. You said it earlier on the show here about, you know, you being wrapped up in this windstorm of things, so to speak, and not being able to see the forest through the trees. Your agent and manager have been there before.
Yes.
They can see the forest through the trees where you can't. But if you go in, like, you know, if you're a new medical doctor and you walk into a hospital and you say to everybody, I know it all. I know how to cure these people. I can 100% guarantee you I can cure these people. They're going to think you're crazy and say, get out of the hospital. We don't want you here as a doctor.
Yeah.
So why would you do that in a talent agency or go into a management company and say that to a manager or an agent? You don't know everything. They've been doing it, you know. And so I say this to my football players and basketball players and actors and everything. I don't know everything about what you do as an actor or what you do as a podcaster, but I know how to manage people.
Yep.
And I think I know enough about the industry.
Yep.
And so I've turned down A-list talent that have applied to this agency, and I've chosen them in lieu of someone who's just starting out of this, in this industry. So I've chosen the new talent.
Yeah.
Just because they come in with an ego or whatever.
Right. Absolutely. So I want to ask you this last thing. What's something that you know now that you wish that you knew when you were getting started?
It's interesting. I've done marketing's making me do all these interviews.
It probably gets asked a lot.
Yeah, and no, actually, there's only been one other person that's asked me that question.
Really, and I feel like I'd have to go back because I think I still have my question notepad from when we did our interview. I either wrote it down and didn't ask it, or I wrote it down and I did ask you. So this is, I guess, technically maybe the second time I've asked you this.
Okay, yeah, I don't remember it, but that was
I can't remember exactly.
My mind is.
This is like a go-to. This is like okay, you had a cliche earlier. This is my cliche. So now we're even. What
would I have liked to have known now versus?
Yeah. So what you know now that you wish you would have known when you were getting started?
I would say how tough this industry is. I know it's a cliche, but how tough an industry is, and then tough there's many branches underneath that, tough on how, the backstabbing goes on in the industry, or how competitive the industry is, or how, horrible people can be to other people, in this industry. And that's why we have, the screening process. This from doing a new talent interview with us.
Yeah.
We have a screening process. Our new talent interview calls are a minimum of 2 hours.
Yeah.
I know you were probably around there a long time with me too.
Yeah.
But we do that for a reason. I'm not going to avoid the Coca-Cola recipe of why we do that. I think I might have mentioned it to you off camera before, right, of why we do that reason. But I want to make sure that who I'm bringing into my house and who I'm going to represent, I feel comfortable representing. And that doesn't mean everybody, gets represented. I've had talent proposed to me from the likes of, example of a CEO of a major record label proposed somebody to me. I never met the guy who's the CEO of this major record label. I'm representing the talent that he proposed, but the talent got in on his own volition in his own interview with me. But it's a tough industry. I would have liked to also have known, how people coming into this industry, look at it much differently than I looked at it. And I look at it as well too.
Yeah.
Staff coming in to this industry, they look at it. It's interesting. I have to tell this story about this guy too in my agency. I'll say his name because we love him. He's sweet and dear to us. Hunter.
Yeah.
So I was in a meeting one time with Hunter, and they're going to meeting with these influencers. Hunter was running the influencer team when he first started out the agency. He's moved on to a different department. He's in pitch now with production and representing our screenwriters and producers. But when he was running influencing and branding and stuff like that, he comes to me and he starts talking to me and I'm like, oh, when are we doing our next talent interview? Blah, blah, blah. The subject matter came up. And Hunter's like, yeah, he's like, well, Hunter's very tactful on how he talks. This. You've worked with him. He used to represent you. Yeah. And he says to me, well, he goes, I'd like to try this one with the team on my own. I think, blah, blah, blah. And he starts talking about it. And I'm like, oh, I get what you're talking about. He goes, what? And I said, I'm too old. You don't want the old fart in the meeting with you. you youngins who are the young crop of
Yes.
influencers, you want to be able to talk to the other 20 or 18-year-olds
Yes.
that are in that. I'm like, he's like, well, and then it came on, and Hunter's like, yeah, and I'm
Yeah.
like, he goes, are you bothered by that? I said, oh, thank God, because I don't want to have to attend these meetings.
Yeah. Oh,
I'm free. I'm free. I'm released.
Great.
I'm free. I just don't want to end up in those meetings. And he's like, oh, so it was a win-win. And I'm like, yeah, but I was attending them because I thought he wanted me to attend. And he was like, no, I want to fly solo. So he's trying to provide it without tactfully saying you're too old to be in these meetings, that they just want to, influencers just want to see the young people in the department. But I was fine with it.
Yeah.
I think, learning those things. I can learn from the staff. I can learn from talent like you as well too. We have case studies in the agency of things we've done with talent and things not to do with talent that we learn. So we're always learning. So I wish I would have learned how tough this industry was,
Absolutely.
and how tough it is before I got into it, so I could position myself appropriately.
For sure. For sure. Well, Craig, this has been so insightful. I thank you so much for coming on. I'm glad we were finally able to do it. And I just thank everyone for listening. I hope they learned a lot. They enjoyed this. It's a nice inside baseball, if you will, of our agency and the industry a little bit. So I think it's fascinating. People are really going to enjoy this.
Yeah, and I hope they do. I hope they do, Joe. I hope, they, you're a good spokesperson for the agency because of what we did, because of where you started off and where you are now.
Yep.
People can see that exact track record. And I speak on behalf of CK that we are so proud of you.
Thank
and
you.
what you've done. And that podcast of you being able to handle Gerard Butler meditation
When they were being weird, I was like, oh God.
Yeah, I think I called you on the phone about that, and it's like,
You
what
did.
the going on in that that interview?
I was like, oh God, are they frozen? What do I say? It threw me off a little bit, but I recovered. It ended up being okay.
And I will add to your viewers here. I don't know if you knew this, but I heard from the booking company that booked you to do the Maggie Q interview.
Mm-hmm.
The studio executive was in the main room there watching
Oh.
on camera, and they said they absolutely want you to do all their interviews in the future.
Well, I'll
That's
do
what
it.
Nate had said to me. I was like, yeah, they just love Joe. That studio just loves Joe.
Well, I will do it.
Maggie absolutely adored you in that
Oh my
interview.
gosh, I was like freaking out.
Sweetheart. Yeah,
well, it was so funny because we took a couple pictures together, obviously, and we go over there. I'm like, where should we stand? And so she's like, I'll come over here into the, over here where the, into the light, because obviously the lighting's perfect in there for the interview. I'm like, right. Oh, perfect. Like, thanks for, as we were standing there, I was like, thanks for looking out for me. And she was like, oh, you don't need it. And I was just like, my heart skipped a beat there for a second with Maggie Q complimenting me. So that
and most people don't know most people don't know they're going from interview to interview to interview.
Oh yeah, she's probably been 100 places
for an actor, right? So for an actor to show you preferential interest, is big, because they're doing like 50 of those press junkets. They have the guys lined up down the hallway there.
Oh yeah, I was standing in that line. I was one of many. Luckily, I was always both those days. I was at the beginning, like first or second, so I kind of got them fresh. But yeah, that I can't imagine how long of a day that can be.
I did that once for Resident Evil.
Oh my God.
With that Michael, whatever his name is in Resident Evil. And that was like a long day. It was, you go up to the suite, you sit down, they have nice hors d'oeuvres and everything. And then you kind of read over the press junket materials they give you. Yeah. And then bring you in one by one. But it was just, I've done those things. I've seen what the press junkets are like. So that way I could explain to like you and other talent that do these things, so I have an idea of what they do. But I won't do one again. I won't attend one again. So I did it once and it's good enough for me.
Yeah, they're fun, especially Miami, because all the people were nice. It's not as probably uptight and vicious as it could be in LA if you were doing it, for example. So it was fun being like an interview mercenary for the weekend. You come in, you watch a few movies, do a few interviews, enjoy the city, and it was fantastic. I hope to have that experience again soon. It was great.
Awesome. I'm sure you will. And much success with you and your show, and everyone that supports you. I think it's absolutely, great in what you're doing and how you've blossomed.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Craig. And thank you all so much for listening. Do not forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Thank you. to our presenting sponsor, Step One, and we will talk to you guys next time.